His dog scratched through a hidden wall in an abandoned motel and uncovered a veteran no one was supposed to find. A homeless Navy SEAL explored his family's abandoned motel. His dog found a room never checked out. Logan Pierce thought inheriting a dying motel in the Montana mountains was nothing more than a chance to sell it and move on. But when his loyal German shepherd, Atlas, discovers a sealed room erased from the building's blueprints, they uncover a decades-old disappearance, a buried conspiracy, and a truth powerful men tried to keep hidden forever. Comment 1 if you'd keep searching for the truth no matter the risk, or 0 if you'd walk away, and tell us where you're watching from. The wind came down from the Bitterroot Mountains like a living thing. It rattled the loose metal sign outside the truck stop and pushed waves of powdery snow across the dark parking lot. The temperature had dropped below freezing hours ago, and the old Ford pickup groaned every time a stronger gust struck its rusted frame. Inside the truck, Logan Pierce slept in short, broken fragments. Sleep rarely stayed with him for long. One moment he was staring at the ceiling of the cab, watching his breath fog the cold air. The next, he was somewhere else entirely. Gunfire, smoke, shouting, a helicopter rotor hammering against the sky. The nightmare arrived without warning. Logan jerked in his seat as invisible explosions echoed through his mind. His hands clenched, his breathing became shallow, sweat gathered beneath his jacket despite the freezing temperature. Then a warm muzzle pressed firmly against his arm. A low whine followed. Logan opened his eyes. The battlefield vanished. The truck returned. Darkness, snow, silence, and Atlas. The German shepherd sat upright on the passenger seat, watching him with calm brown eyes. For a few seconds, Logan couldn't remember where he was. Then reality settled back into place. Black Creek, Montana. Truck stop parking lot. Another night. Another nightmare. Another morning waiting just beyond the darkness. "It's okay," Logan whispered. His voice sounded rough from sleep. Atlas nudged him again. The dog had learned the routine years ago. Wake him. Ground him. Bring him back. The panic attack never fully arrived when Atlas caught it early enough. Logan reached over and scratched behind the shepherd's ears. Atlas immediately relaxed. The dog's black and tan coat looked older now. Gray hairs had begun appearing around his muzzle. A scar crossed one shoulder from an injury suffered years earlier overseas. Age was catching both of them. Neither liked admitting it. "You saved my ass again." Atlas thumped his tail against the seat. Outside, snow continued falling. Logan checked the dashboard clock. 3:17 a.m. 3 more hours until sunrise. 3 more hours before he had to figure out what came next. He leaned his head against the window. The cold glass pressed against his temple. Across the parking lot, lights glowed from the truck stop diner. A few long-haul truckers sat inside drinking coffee and eating pie while waiting for weather conditions to improve. Once upon a time, Logan had believed his life would look different at 44. A career, a home, a family maybe. Instead, he had an old truck, a military duffel bag, and a German shepherd who refused to abandon him. Funny enough, Atlas was the only thing Logan truly trusted anymore. The years after leaving the Navy had not been kind. At first, everything seemed manageable. He found work, kept busy, tried to adjust. Then the nightmares became worse. The crowds became harder. The sudden noises, the anxiety, the endless feeling that danger waited just around every corner. Employers noticed. Relationships collapsed. Bills stacked higher. Eventually, the savings disappeared. Then the apartment. Then everything else. The transition from respected veteran to homeless man happened so gradually that Logan hardly noticed it until it was finished. He stared through the windshield. Snowflakes drifted beneath the yellow glow of a parking lot lamp. A younger version of himself would have hated this life. The older version barely had enough energy left to hate anything. Atlas lowered himself across the seat and rested his head against Logan's leg. The simple gesture carried more comfort than words ever could. For nearly 2 years, they had survived together. Truck stops, campgrounds, temporary jobs, shelters, abandoned rest areas, wherever they could find a safe place to spend the night. Atlas never complained, never judged, never asked why. He simply stayed. The dog had followed Logan through deserts, mountains, and combat zones. Now he followed him through poverty. Maybe loyalty was easier for dogs than people. Logan eventually drifted back into a light sleep. When morning arrived, sunlight filtered weakly through low gray clouds. The storm had moved east. The world outside looked frozen and colorless. Logan stretched carefully. His back immediately protested. Atlas was already awake. The shepherd sat alert, staring toward the diner. Breakfast. That was what mattered. Logan managed a tired smile. Yeah, I know. A few minutes later, they crossed the parking lot together. The diner smelled like coffee, bacon, and heat. The warmth hit Logan's face the moment he stepped inside. For a brief second, it felt like stepping into another life. The waitress knew him. Most people in Black Creek did by now, not because he was important, because small towns noticed everything, especially homeless veterans with large German shepherds. Morning, Logan. Morning, Nancy. She placed coffee in front of him without asking. Atlas settled beside the booth. Several regular customers waved. Logan nodded politely. Then he focused on the coffee. Hot. Strong. Exactly what he needed. The bell above the door jingled. A woman entered carrying a leather briefcase. She looked around the diner before spotting Logan. Her expression shifted from uncertainty to relief. There you are. Logan frowned. The woman approached his table. Logan Pierce? Depends who's asking. A small smile appeared. My name is Karen Whitmore. I'm an attorney from Hamilton. Logan immediately felt cautious. Lawyers rarely searched for homeless men unless something had gone wrong. Karen opened her briefcase. I've been trying to locate you for nearly 3 weeks. Logan exchanged a glance with Atlas. The dog remained calm. That alone made Logan stay seated. What do you need? Karen removed several documents. I represent the estate of Russell Pierce. The name hit Logan unexpectedly. Russell, his uncle, the man he hadn't seen in almost 15 years, the man who used to send Christmas cards every year even after the rest of the family stopped calling. Logan straightened slightly. Uncle Russell passed away? Karen nodded. 3 months ago. For a moment, Logan said nothing. The news landed heavier than expected. He hadn't been close with Russell. Not really. But Russell had always been one of the few relatives who treated him like more than a problem. What does that have to do with me? Karen slid a folder across the table. Everything. Logan opened it. The first page contained legal documents, property transfer forms, probate paperwork, estate records. Then he saw the address, Timber Ridge Motel, Bitterroot Mountains. Owner transfer. Logan Pierce. His eyes narrowed. What is this? Your uncle left you the motel. Logan laughed once. Not because it was funny, because it sounded ridiculous. The old motel off Highway 47? Yes. I thought that place closed years ago. It did. Karen nodded, which is why it's worth considerably less than it once was. Logan stared at the paperwork. A motel. An abandoned motel. Of all things. Not money, not investments, not land. A motel. Why me? Karen hesitated. According to Russell's will, you were the only family member he believed would understand what it meant to start over. The words lingered. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Even Atlas seemed unusually focused on the folder. Karen finally continued. The property is yours now. Taxes are current. Ownership is clean. Logan blinked. You're serious? I am. Outside the diner window, sunlight touched distant mountain peaks. The world suddenly felt different. Not better. Not fixed. Just different. For the first time in years, something unexpected had appeared in front of him. Not a miracle. Not salvation. An opportunity. A small one. Maybe enough. He looked down at Atlas. The shepherd watched him patiently. What do you think, partner? Atlas tilted his head. Karen smiled. I don't know if dogs vote on real estate. They should. Logan folded the paperwork. A motel wasn't a future, but it might be a way out. Sell it. Pay debts. Get a fresh start. Simple. At least that's what he told himself. What Logan couldn't possibly know was that Timber Ridge Motel had been waiting for him far longer than he realized. And deep within the abandoned building, hidden behind walls no guest had seen for decades, a secret was still waiting to be found. A secret that Atlas would find first. The drive into the Bitterroot Mountains took most of the day. Logan followed Highway 47 as it wound through valleys lined with pine forests and steep ridges dusted with early snow. The farther he traveled, the fewer vehicles he saw. By late afternoon, the road seemed almost forgotten by the rest of the world. Atlas sat upright in the passenger seat, watching the landscape pass by. Unlike Logan, the dog seemed energized. Maybe it was the fresh mountain air. Maybe it was the simple fact that they were finally headed somewhere. For nearly 2 years, every road had led nowhere. Now there was at least a destination. Logan glanced at the folded property documents resting on the dashboard. Timber Ridge Motel. Even the name sounded old, like something from another era. The GPS signal disappeared 20 miles earlier, forcing him to rely on handwritten directions Karen Whitmore had given him. When the motel finally appeared, Logan almost drove past it. The faded sign stood crooked beside the highway. Several letters had fallen away years ago. Timber Ridge Motel had become Tim E.R. Rid E.M.O.T.L. The remaining neon tubing hung dead and colorless beneath the gray sky. Logan slowed the truck. Atlas immediately stood. His ears rose. His attention sharpened. The property sat on several acres at the edge of a forest. Behind it, mountains towered against the horizon. The motel itself stretched in a long U-shape around a cracked gravel courtyard. Most of the windows were boarded. Weeds pushed through the pavement. The entire place looked abandoned by time itself. Logan parked near the office. The engine clicked softly as it cooled. Neither man nor dog moved for several seconds. Finally, Logan exhaled. So this is it. Atlas stared through the windshield. Logan almost laughed. Yeah, I know. The dog was already impatient. Stepping out of the truck, Logan felt the cold immediately. The mountain air carried the scent of pine trees and distant snow. The silence struck him first. No traffic, no voices, no machinery. Only the wind moving through the forest. It felt strange after years of truck stops and crowded parking lots. Atlas jumped down and immediately began exploring. His nose stayed low, working, searching, reading scents invisible to human eyes. Logan walked toward the office. The front door was locked, but the key Karen provided still worked. The lock resisted before finally turning. The door opened with a long groan. Dust floated through sunlight pouring from a cracked front window. The smell inside was a mixture of mildew, old wood, and forgotten years. Logan stepped carefully. Nothing had been touched in ages. A registration counter sat near the entrance. Behind it hung rows of empty key hooks. Old brochures remained stacked in faded displays. A wall calendar still showed September. 20 years ago. The sight made Logan shake his head. His uncle had truly left the place untouched. Atlas wandered through the office before disappearing into a hallway. Logan spent the next hour inspecting the property. Most rooms were empty. Furniture remained covered with sheets. Several mattresses had collapsed. Water stains marked portions of the ceiling. The motel clearly needed more repairs than he could afford, which only reinforced his original plan. Sell it. Take whatever money he could get. Move forward. Simple. At least that was the plan. As afternoon faded toward evening, Logan began organizing paperwork inside the office. The motel blueprint lay spread across the counter. Property records, tax forms, old maintenance reports. The work kept his mind occupied. That mattered. Idle thoughts were dangerous. Too much silence often allowed old memories to surface. Combat, loss, mistakes, faces he could never forget. Atlas suddenly barked, one sharp bark, then another. Logan looked up. The dog stood outside, near the center section of the motel. "What's wrong?" Atlas barked again. Logan stepped outside. The cold had grown sharper. Clouds gathered above the mountains. Atlas stood beside an exterior wall. Nothing unusual appeared there, just faded paint and warped wood paneling. Yet the German shepherd refused to move. He sniffed the wall, backed away, returned, sniffed again, then scratched lightly against the siding. Logan frowned. "What is it?" Atlas ignored him. The dog remained focused on the same location. Logan walked closer. The wall separated rooms 7 and 9. He noticed nothing strange. No visible opening, no damaged boards, nothing. After several minutes, Atlas finally stopped, reluctantly. But even as he walked away, he kept looking back. The behavior lingered in Logan's mind. Atlas was not a random barker. Years of military training had made the dog disciplined and deliberate. When Atlas fixated on something, there was usually a reason. The sun disappeared behind the mountains. Temperatures dropped rapidly. Logan built a small fire in the office fireplace using wood left in a storage shed. The flames filled the room with warmth and soft light. For the first time in months, he sat somewhere that almost resembled a home. Atlas stretched beside the fire. His eyes slowly closed. Logan watched the flames dance. Outside, darkness settled over the motel. The old building creaked occasionally as temperatures fell. The sounds reminded him of ships at sea, or distant structures settling under winter pressure. Nothing threatening, just age. Still, sleep didn't come easily. It never did. Near midnight, Logan finally drifted off in an old office chair. The nightmare arrived quickly. Gunfire, chaos, smoke, someone screaming his name. Logan woke suddenly. His heart hammered, his breathing quickened. For several seconds he couldn't remember where he was. Then Atlas appeared. The German shepherd pressed firmly against his leg, grounding him, anchoring him, bringing him back. The panic passed, slowly. Logan rubbed the dog's neck. Good boy. Atlas remained beside him until the shaking stopped. Eventually, Logan stood and walked to the front window. Moonlight illuminated the empty courtyard. The motel looked almost peaceful, a forgotten place waiting for a second chance. Maybe he understood it better than he wanted to admit. Both of them had been left behind. Both had seen better days. Both carried scars nobody else could see. A movement outside caught his attention. Atlas noticed it too. The dog's ears rose immediately. For a moment, Logan thought someone was there, but it was only a loose sign swinging in the wind. The tension faded. Yet Atlas continued watching. Not the sign. Something else. Something farther down the building, near the same section of wall from earlier. The dog stood, walked to the door, and stared. Logan followed his gaze. The darkness revealed nothing. Still, Atlas remained focused, silent, alert, watching. A strange feeling settled into Logan's chest. The feeling that the motel wasn't quite what it appeared to be. The feeling that something hidden lingered beneath the surface. Eventually, he closed the curtains. Tomorrow he would inspect the property more thoroughly. Maybe Atlas had detected rodents, or another animal nesting inside the walls. There was probably a simple explanation. There usually was. Yet as Logan returned to the fire, Atlas stayed awake. The German Shepherd continued listening to sounds only he could hear. Outside, the wind moved through the Bitterroot Mountains. Inside, somewhere behind weathered walls and forgotten years, the first clues waited patiently. And Atlas had already begun finding them. The next morning arrived cold and bright. Sunlight spilled across the Bitterroot Mountains, turning the snow-covered peaks gold. Frost coated the motel windows. The parking lot glittered beneath a thin layer of ice. Logan stood outside the office holding a steaming cup of coffee. For the first time in months, he had slept somewhere with four walls around him. It hadn't been good sleep, but it had been better than the truck. Atlas emerged from the office doorway and stretched. The German Shepherd shook frost from his coat before immediately turning toward the center section of the motel. The same section, the same wall, the same place that had captured his attention the day before. Logan noticed it instantly. "You still thinking about that spot?" Atlas started walking. Not toward the forest, not toward the parking lot, straight toward the wall. Logan followed. The morning air smelled of pine trees and melting frost. Atlas lowered his nose and began investigating again. Slowly, methodically. His military training still showed in everything he did. He sniffed along the warped wooden siding, moved several feet, returned, then stopped. The dog stared directly at a section of wall located between room 7 and room 9. Logan crossed his arms. Something felt wrong. Not frightening, just wrong. The spacing, the proportions, the layout. He stepped backward and looked at the motel from a distance. Then he walked toward room 7, counted, measured, compared. His eyes narrowed. The wall between the two rooms appeared longer than it should have been. Not by much. Maybe 6 feet. Maybe 7. Enough to notice once someone pointed it out, or once a dog refused to ignore it. Logan returned to the office. Atlas followed. Inside, dust floated through beams of sunlight. The motel blueprints still lay spread across the counter where Logan had left them the night before. He unfolded them completely. Room numbers stretched across the page. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Logan stopped, then looked again. 14. He counted once more. The actual building only contained 13 visible rooms. His pulse quickened slightly. Maybe the plans were wrong. Maybe a renovation happened years ago. Maybe a room had been converted into storage. There had to be an explanation. He searched deeper into the paperwork. Old maintenance logs, repair invoices, insurance records, property inspections. Most were faded and incomplete. Then he found a maintenance report from 1999. The document referenced repairs to rooms 1 through 14, not 13. 14. Logan sat back. The coffee suddenly tasted cold. Atlas stepped closer. The dog placed his head beneath Logan's hand, grounding him, helping him focus, the same way he always did. "You think there's actually something there?" Atlas stared toward the hallway. Logan laughed quietly. "Yeah, that's what I thought." The rest of the morning disappeared into investigation. Logan searched every accessible room, every storage closet, every utility space. Nothing explained the missing room. No sealed doorway, no renovation records, no evidence. And yet the blueprints remained unchanged. 14 rooms, not 13. By early afternoon, curiosity had become obsession. Atlas seemed equally determined. The German shepherd spent most of the day returning to the mysterious wall. Each time he behaved the same way. Sniff, pause, scratch, wait, as if trying to communicate something. Finally, Logan grabbed a flashlight and a pry bar from a maintenance shed behind the motel. The shed itself looked ready to collapse. Rust covered the tools. Spider webs hung from the rafters. Yet the pry bar remained solid, heavy, useful. Logan carried it back to the motel. Atlas immediately became alert. The dog knew something was about to happen. The wall stood silent before them, a stretch of faded paneling that looked no different from any other section of the building. But now Logan couldn't stop seeing it. The measurements, the missing space, the impossible layout. The motel had a secret, and someone had gone to great lengths to hide it. He examined the wood closely. One section appeared slightly newer than the surrounding boards. Not new, just newer. Different nails, different paint texture, different weathering. A patch. His heartbeat accelerated. Slowly he inserted the pry bar. The old wood resisted, then cracked. A loud snap echoed through the empty courtyard. Atlas jumped backward. Dust exploded into the air. Logan coughed. The sound faded. Silence returned. He pulled harder. Another board came loose, then another. The opening widened. Darkness waited beyond. Not insulation, not framing. Space. An empty space. Atlas immediately pushed forward. The dog's ears stood upright. His body became tense, focused. Logan removed several more boards, enough to reveal what lay hidden behind them. A doorway. An actual doorway. His stomach tightened. The door had been completely concealed behind the wall, covered intentionally, erased. Dust coated every inch of it. Cobwebs stretched from the frame. The brass handle had turned green with age, and mounted at eye level sat a tarnished metal plate. Logan brushed away decades of grime. The number appeared slowly. He stared. Room 8. For several seconds he simply stood there, trying to process what he was seeing. The motel blueprint hadn't been wrong. The room existed. Someone had hidden it. Atlas moved closer. The German shepherd sniffed beneath the door, then sat, waiting. Logan's pulse hammered inside his chest. A memory surfaced unexpectedly. A briefing room overseas, a sealed building, a mission nobody fully understood. The same sensation returned now. The feeling that once a door opened, nothing would remain the same. He pushed the thought away. This wasn't combat. This wasn't war. It was an abandoned motel. Nothing more. Yet his hands trembled slightly. Atlas noticed. The dog pressed against his leg, steadying him, helping him breathe. Logan exhaled slowly. "Okay, partner." The brass handle felt icy beneath his fingers. For a moment he wondered why his uncle never mentioned this room, why the records never referenced it, why someone had hidden it so completely. Then he turned the handle. Nothing. Locked. Of course. He searched the frame, examined the hinges. The lock. Years of dust suggested nobody had touched it in decades. Atlas suddenly stood. The dog began sniffing near the bottom corner of the doorway, then scratched. Once, twice. Logan knelt. There, half buried beneath dust and debris, a key, an old brass key, small, forgotten, waiting. His breath caught. Atlas stepped back, almost as if he knew. Logan picked up the key carefully. The metal felt cold, ancient. The tag attached to it had long since faded, yet somehow it remained. The final piece. The thing someone had overlooked. He inserted the key. The lock resisted. Then a loud metallic click echoed through the hallway. Atlas immediately moved beside him, ready, watching. Logan slowly pushed the door inward. The hinges screamed. A stale wave of air rolled from the darkness. The smell wasn't decay. It was age. Years trapped behind a sealed room. Dust floated through the narrow beam of his flashlight. The room slowly emerged. A bed, a dresser, a chair, curtains, a desk. Everything untouched. Everything frozen. As if somebody had simply stepped outside for a moment and never returned. The silence felt unnatural, almost sacred. Atlas entered first. The German shepherd moved cautiously. His nails clicked softly against the floor. Logan followed. His flashlight swept across the room. Nothing appeared disturbed. No vandalism. No signs of looting. No evidence anyone had entered since the door was hidden. Then the beam landed on the desk. A coffee mug, a notebook, a lamp, and a thin layer of dust covering everything equally. 26 years. Maybe longer. Logan's heart pounded. Somewhere inside this room existed the reason someone had hidden it. Somewhere inside waited the answer. Atlas stopped near the bed. The dog stared into the darkness beneath it, then slowly looked back at Logan. Waiting. The room had been found, but the mystery was only beginning. For several long seconds, neither Logan nor Atlas moved. The beam of Logan's flashlight drifted slowly across room 8. Dust floated through the stale air like tiny ghosts suspended in time. Everything looked frozen, not abandoned. Frozen. The bed remained neatly made beneath a faded brown blanket. A coffee mug sat beside a lamp on the desk. A pair of boots rested near the wall. A jacket hung from the back of a chair. It looked as though someone had stepped outside for a few minutes and never returned. Logan swallowed hard. Something about the room unsettled him. Not because it felt dangerous, because it felt personal. Every object seemed to carry the invisible presence of the person who had left it behind. Atlas moved deeper into the room. His nose worked constantly. The German shepherd investigated every corner carefully. Logan approached the desk. A layer of dust covered everything. He brushed some away and revealed an old motel registration card. His pulse immediately quickened. The paper had yellowed with age. The handwriting remained legible. Guest name, Michael Granger. Check-in date, October 17th, 1998. Check-out, blank. Logan stared. The name meant nothing to him. Yet something about the incomplete registration card made the room suddenly feel heavier. A man had checked in. A man had never checked out. The realization settled over him like cold fog. He searched the desk drawers. Most contained ordinary items. Pens, receipts, a few newspapers, a small notebook. The notebook stopped him. Inside were handwritten notes. Most pages contained numbers, names, dates, locations. Nothing made immediate sense. Several pages had been torn out. Others were filled with cryptic abbreviations. Atlas suddenly barked. One sharp bark. Logan looked up. The dog stood beside the closet. His posture had changed. Alert, focused. The same look he used when he detected something important. "What is it?" Atlas pawed the floor. Logan walked over. The closet door creaked when he opened it. Inside hung several shirts and a heavy winter coat. A military duffel bag sat in the corner. Dust coated everything. Yet the sight of the bag immediately caught Logan's attention. Military. His instincts recognized it instantly. He knelt beside it. The zipper resisted before finally opening. Inside lay neatly folded clothing, a shaving kit, a flashlight, several books, and a worn leather folder. Logan opened the folder carefully. Dozens of papers filled the inside. Financial reports, property maps, government forms, copies of contracts. The further he looked, the stranger they became. Certain names appeared repeatedly. Businesses, officials, development projects. Many pages had handwritten notes in the margins. Questions, observations, warnings. Whoever Michael Granger had been, he had been investigating something. Something important. Something large. Atlas continued sniffing around the room. Logan remained focused on the folder. One page drew his attention. Across the top was a newspaper clipping. The headline had faded but remained readable. Former Army intelligence officer missing. The accompanying photograph showed a man in his late 30s, short hair, serious expression, confident eyes. Michael Granger. Logan froze. The missing guest, the owner of room 8, the man who never checked out. He read the article. Michael Granger had disappeared shortly after arriving in Black Creek. His vehicle had later been discovered abandoned near the mountains. Authorities never found him. The case eventually went cold. Logan leaned back slowly. 26 years. 26 years, and nobody had solved what happened. Yet somehow the answer appeared connected to this room. Atlas moved toward the bed, then stopped. The dog stared beneath it. His ears stood upright. His body became rigid. Logan recognized the behavior immediately. Atlas had found something. The German shepherd lowered himself and pushed his nose beneath the frame, then barked. Once, twice. Logan grabbed the flashlight. He knelt beside the bed. The beam swept across the darkness. At first he saw nothing. Then something metallic reflected the light. A small object sat hidden near the wall, too far to reach. Logan grabbed a broken coat hanger from the closet and stretched it beneath the bed. After several attempts, he hooked the object and pulled it forward. Dust scraped across the floor. The object emerged slowly. Logan stared. A cassette recorder. Old, black, covered in dust, yet surprisingly intact. His heart began pounding. Atlas sat beside him, watching, waiting. Logan carefully turned the recorder over. A cassette remained inside. For a moment he considered leaving it alone. Then curiosity won. The batteries were long dead, but after searching the room he found a portable power adapter tucked inside a drawer. Several tense minutes later, the recorder clicked to life. A burst of static filled the room. Logan and Atlas both froze. The sound seemed impossibly loud inside the silent motel. Then a voice emerged. A man's voice. Tired, nervous, breathing heavily. "My name is Michael Granger." Logan's skin prickled. The voice continued. "If somebody finds this recording, it means I either failed or I ran out of time." Static crackled. Then the recording resumed. "I came to Black Creek because money intended for veterans started disappearing. Millions of dollars. Grants, assistance funds, Housing programs. Logan listened intently. Atlas remained perfectly still. I thought it was bookkeeping errors at first. Michael let out a bitter laugh. It wasn't. The recorder crackled again. There are people involved who have power. Local officials, developers, businesses. Another pause. I've gathered evidence. Copies. Records. Names. Logan exchanged a glance with Atlas. The contents of the folder suddenly made much more sense. Michael had been investigating corruption. Large-scale corruption. The recording continued. If anything happens to me, the evidence is real. A chair creaked in the background. Michael's breathing quickened, as though he feared someone might be listening. Then his voice dropped. I made a mistake. Silence. Several seconds passed. Then, they know I'm here. Logan felt a chill crawl across his shoulders. Outside, wind rattled the motel windows. The recording carried on. If you're hearing this, be careful. Whoever finds room 8 needs to understand. Suddenly, the tape cut out. Static filled the speaker. Then silence. Complete silence. Logan pressed the button again. Nothing. The recording had ended, or been interrupted. He sat motionless on the edge of the bed. The room suddenly felt smaller, heavier. Michael Granger hadn't simply disappeared. Michael Granger had been hiding, investigating, recording evidence. And somehow, 26 years later, his secret room still remained untouched. Atlas slowly rested his head against Logan's knee. The familiar gesture grounded him. His breathing steadied. His thoughts slowed. The symptoms of panic that often followed moments like this never fully arrived. Not with Atlas there. Not this time. Logan reached down and scratched behind the dog's ears. Good work, partner. Atlas's tail tapped the floor once. The sun had begun sinking behind the mountains. Long shadows stretched across room 8. The light faded. Darkness gathered. Logan looked around the room once more. The desk, the bed, the duffel bag, the recorder, the forgotten belongings. Everything pointed toward a story much larger than a missing guest. Somewhere beyond these walls existed people connected to Michael Granger. People who might still remember. People who might still know something. And perhaps people who never wanted this room discovered. Logan carefully placed the cassette recorder inside the duffel bag. Then he gathered the documents. Tomorrow he would go into town. Tomorrow he would start asking questions. Tomorrow he would learn who Michael Granger really was. Outside, the last light disappeared behind the Bitterroot Mountains. Inside room 8, a 26-year-old mystery had finally begun to speak. And someone, somewhere, might soon realize that the hidden room was no longer hidden. Logan barely slept that night. The cassette recorder sat on the office desk beside Michael Granger's documents. Every time Logan closed his eyes, he heard the same words. They know I'm here. The sentence echoed through his thoughts long after the recording ended. Outside, wind moved through the pines surrounding Timber Ridge Motel. Inside, Atlas remained unusually alert. The German Shepherd spent most of the night positioned near the office window, occasionally lifting his head toward the darkness outside. By dawn, Logan gave up on sleep entirely. He brewed coffee using an ancient machine he found in the office storage room and spread Michael's papers across the counter. Morning light filtered through dirty windows. One by one, he examined the documents. Most contained financial records, property acquisitions, development proposals, land transfers. The same names appeared repeatedly. Several signatures, several companies. None meant anything to him yet. But Michael clearly believed they mattered. Atlas approached and rested beside the desk. Logan rubbed the dog's neck absent-mindedly. "Looks like we're taking a trip into town." Atlas lifted his head. As always, the word trip seemed to interest him. An hour later, they were driving toward Black Creek. The small mountain town sat roughly 20 miles from the motel. Snow still covered portions of the surrounding hills. Smoke drifted from chimneys. American flags fluttered outside storefronts. The place looked peaceful. Too peaceful for the secrets Logan had begun uncovering. He parked near Main Street. Atlas jumped down beside him. Several locals glanced toward the large German shepherd as Logan walked past. Most smiled. Atlas had that effect on people. The first stop was the public library. The building was small but well-maintained. Logan spent nearly an hour searching old newspaper archives. Atlas lay quietly beside the table while Logan scrolled through digital records. Eventually, he found what he was looking for: Michael Granger. The headline appeared on a local newspaper page from 1998. Former Army intelligence officer missing. Several articles followed. Search efforts, public appeals, interviews, speculation. Then nothing. The story simply vanished. No resolution, no arrest, no body, no answers. Almost as if the town had collectively decided to stop asking questions. Logan leaned back. Something about that bothered him. Missing persons usually generated years of discussion in small towns, especially former military personnel. Yet Michael seemed to have disappeared from local memory. That wasn't normal. The next clue came from a name attached to several articles. Claire Bennett, reporter, Black Creek Chronicle. Logan closed the archive. The newspaper office sat only 3 blocks away. The Black Creek Chronicle occupied a narrow brick building between a hardware store and a barber shop. A faded sign hung above the entrance. Inside, the office smelled like paper, coffee, and printer ink. Stacks of newspapers covered nearly every available surface. A woman in her late 50s looked up from behind a desk. Silver streaks ran through her dark hair. Sharp eyes studied Logan immediately. Then Atlas. Then Logan again. "Can I help you?" "Claire Bennett?" "Depends who's asking." Logan smiled slightly. "Seems to be a common response around here." Claire almost smiled. "Occupational habit." Logan introduced himself. The moment he mentioned Michael Granger, her expression changed. Not dramatically, but enough. Enough for Logan to notice. Claire slowly removed her reading glasses. "Where did you hear that name?" "Timber Ridge Motel." Silence. The room suddenly felt smaller. Claire stared at him for several seconds. Then her eyes drifted toward Atlas. The German shepherd remained calm, watching, waiting. Finally, she sighed. I wondered if someone would eventually find that room. Logan felt his pulse quicken. "You know about it?" "Most of the older people in town do." Claire stood and walked toward a filing cabinet. "The problem is, nobody talks about it anymore." She opened a drawer, pulled out a thin folder, returned. Michael Granger arrived in Black Creek in October of 1998. She placed the folder on the desk. He told people he was researching land development projects. Logan listened carefully. "Was he?" Claire shook her head. "No." She lowered her voice. "He was investigating something much bigger." The folder contained copies of old notes, photographs, interview transcripts. Michael's face appeared repeatedly. The same serious expression from the newspaper clipping. He wasn't popular with certain people. Logan nodded. "Because of what he was uncovering?" Claire's eyes narrowed. "You've already found some evidence." It wasn't a question. Logan didn't answer. He didn't need to. Claire understood. "Be careful," The warning came immediately, without hesitation, without exaggeration. Just genuine concern. What happened to him? Claire stared through the office window toward the mountains. No one knows. The answer felt rehearsed, incomplete, like she'd said it many times before. But? Claire sighed. But a lot of people stopped asking questions because asking questions became uncomfortable. Logan remembered Michael's tape. People with power. Developers. Officials. Businesses. The pieces were beginning to align. Before leaving, Claire handed him a business card. "If you find anything important, call me." Logan slipped it into his pocket. "I will." As he walked toward the door, Claire spoke again. "Mr. Pierce?" Logan turned. Claire hesitated, then said quietly, "If someone hid that room, they had a reason." Outside, clouds had begun gathering over the mountains. The drive back to Timber Ridge felt different. He wasn't simply investigating an old mystery anymore. Now there were witnesses, history, fear. Atlas sat alert beside him the entire way. The dog seemed unusually attentive. Several times he stared into the side mirror, watching traffic, watching the road behind them. Logan eventually noticed. A dark pickup truck remained several vehicles back. Nothing suspicious. Yet somehow it appeared again and again throughout the drive. Coincidence, perhaps. Maybe. By the time Logan reached the motel, the truck was gone. Still, the feeling lingered. The afternoon passed quietly. He returned to room 8, studied more documents, made notes, organized evidence. The deeper he dug, the larger the mystery became. As evening settled over the mountains, snow began falling again. Soft flakes drifted across the courtyard. The motel looked isolated beneath the fading light, almost forgotten. Atlas spent most of the evening near the office fireplace, but shortly after midnight, everything changed. The German shepherd's head snapped upward. Instantly, every muscle tightened. Logan looked up from the documents. Atlas was already moving. The dog crossed the office in seconds, stopped near the window, growled. Low, dangerous, not fear. Warning. Logan stood immediately. Years of military training returned. His body reacted before his mind fully processed the situation. Atlas growled again. Outside, darkness covered the property. Logan carefully moved toward the window. At first he saw nothing, then movement. Near room 8. A shadow. Someone was there. His pulse surged. The figure crouched near the concealed doorway, working quickly, deliberately, as if searching for something. Atlas barked, loud, explosive. The figure froze, then ran. Logan rushed outside. Cold air slammed into him. Snow whipped across the courtyard. The figure disappeared around the corner of the building. Logan chased. Atlas sprinted ahead, fast, silent, focused. By the time they reached the rear parking area, the intruder was gone. Only darkness remained. Logan searched the area with a flashlight. Nothing. No vehicle. No footprints clear enough to follow. Whoever it was knew the property, knew the terrain, and knew exactly where room 8 was located. Atlas continued searching. Suddenly he stopped beside a snow-covered patch of gravel. The dog lowered his nose, sniffed, then looked up. Logan followed the dog's gaze. Something lay partially buried in the snow. A plastic card. He picked it up. The flashlight illuminated faded lettering. County Records Department. Official access badge. The photograph had worn away with age, but the badge itself remained real. Very real. Logan stared toward the darkness surrounding the motel. The wind howled through the pines. Someone had come searching for room 8. Not a curious teenager, not a trespasser. Someone connected to whatever happened 26 years ago. Someone who knew exactly what was hidden there. Atlas moved closer, standing between Logan and the darkness. Protective, ready. Logan slipped the badge into his pocket. For the first time since arriving at Timber Ridge Motel, he felt genuine fear. Not for himself, for what the evidence might reveal. Because if someone was still willing to sneak onto the property after all these years, then Michael Granger's secret wasn't buried. It was still alive. And now whoever had been protecting it knew Logan had found the room. The realization stayed with him through the rest of the night. Logan locked every exterior door of the motel. He checked every window twice. Atlas patrolled the property repeatedly before finally settling near the office entrance. Neither of them truly relaxed. The snowstorm intensified after midnight. Wind drove sheets of snow across the courtyard and rattled the motel walls. Logan sat beside the fireplace with Michael Granger's documents spread across the desk. The county access badge rested nearby. The small piece of plastic seemed insignificant, yet it changed everything. Somebody had come searching for room 8. Somebody connected to the original cover-up. The mystery was no longer sleeping quietly in the past. It had stepped into the present. By sunrise, Logan had reached a decision. He needed help. Not from law enforcement. Not yet. He didn't trust that option. Not after Michael's tape. Not after 26 years of silence. Instead, he drove back to Black Creek. Atlas rode beside him, alert as always. The mountains looked different that morning. Less peaceful. More watchful. As if the landscape itself knew there were secrets buried beneath it. The Black Creek Chronicle opened at 8. Claire Bennett looked surprised when Logan walked through the door. She looked even less surprised when she saw the expression on his face. "You found something." Logan placed the county badge on her desk. Claire stared at it. The color drained from her face. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she quietly closed the office door. "Where did you get this?" "Someone was inside the motel last night." Claire looked toward Atlas. The German shepherd sat calmly beside the door, watching, listening. "Room 8?" Logan nodded. Claire sank into her chair. For the first time since meeting her, she looked genuinely nervous. "That's bad." Logan crossed his arms. "I figured." Claire picked up the badge. Her fingers tightened around it. "This department doesn't even exist anymore." "What?" "The county records department closed years ago." Logan frowned. "Then why would someone still have an access badge?" Claire gave a humorless laugh. "Because some people never really leave." Silence filled the room. Outside, snow drifted past the office windows. Inside, Claire appeared to be wrestling with a decision. Finally, she opened a filing cabinet and pulled out another folder. Unlike the previous one, this folder was thick. Very thick. She set it on the desk. "Officially, none of this exists." Logan sat down. Claire opened the file. Inside were newspaper clippings spanning decades, land acquisitions, development projects, financial reports, political campaigns, photographs, names. One name appeared more than any other: Victor Kane. Logan immediately recognized the face: silver hair, expensive suits, confident smile. The kind of man who looked comfortable standing beside governors and senators. "Who is he?" Claire stared at the photo. "The closest thing Black Creek has ever had to a king." The answer carried no admiration, only resentment. Claire continued. "Victor Kane owns more land in this valley than anyone else." She flipped through pages. Timber companies, real estate developments, Construction projects. Resorts. Another page. Another headline. Another photograph. Over the years, he bought half the county. Logan listened carefully. Something about the name felt familiar. Then he remembered. Several of Michael Granger's documents contained references to Kane Development Group. The same company appeared repeatedly. The same company Michael seemed interested in. Claire noticed the recognition. "You've seen that name already." Again, not a question. Logan nodded. Claire leaned back. Then Michael was following the same trail I was. The statement surprised him. "You investigated Kane?" "For years." Claire smiled sadly and got nowhere. She opened another section of the file. This time the contents focused on veterans programs, housing grants, support funds, community projects. Millions of dollars allocated over decades. Many projects had one thing in common. They were never completed. Others existed only on paper. Some seemed to disappear entirely. Logan slowly pieced it together. Michael wasn't investigating random financial records. He was following money. Veterans' money. Funds intended to help struggling former service members. The realization hit hard. Too hard. Logan knew veterans who slept in cars, veterans who skipped meals, veterans who lost homes, veterans who never received promised assistance. He had become one of them, and somebody had apparently profited from that suffering. Claire watched his expression. "You see it now," Logan nodded slowly. The anger arrived quietly. Not explosive. Cold. Controlled. Dangerous. The same anger he had spent years trying to bury. Atlas sensed the shift immediately. The German shepherd stood and moved closer. His shoulder pressed lightly against Logan's leg, grounding him, keeping him present. Claire noticed. "Good dog." Atlas remained focused on Logan. Always Logan. The bond between them needed no explanation. Claire continued. "Michael Granger wasn't a journalist. No. He wasn't a detective. No." She tapped the documents. He was a former Army intelligence officer. Logan remembered the newspaper clipping, the military background, the careful notes, the hidden evidence. Everything fit. Michael had investigated the way he was trained to investigate. Methodically, patiently, quietly, until someone stopped him. The office grew silent again. Then Claire asked the question both had been avoiding. "What about your uncle?" Logan stared at the file. "I don't know, and that was the truth." Russell Pierce's name appeared occasionally within the motel records. Maintenance contracts, land leases, minor paperwork. Nothing dramatic. Yet Michael's documents suggested deeper connections. Connections Logan still didn't understand. He wanted to believe his uncle had been innocent. But he had already learned one painful lesson. Room 8 didn't exist by accident. Somebody had hidden it. Somebody had concealed an entire human life behind a wall. The drive back to Timber Ridge Motel felt heavier. Clouds hung low over the mountains. Atlas watched the passing landscape silently. Logan replayed everything Claire told him. Victor Kane, missing money, veterans funds, power, influence, fear. The same themes appeared everywhere. By late afternoon, he returned to the motel. The property looked isolated beneath the gray sky. Snow covered portions of the parking lot. Pine trees swayed in the distance. At first, everything appeared normal. Then Atlas froze. The dog stepped out of the truck and immediately lowered his nose. His posture changed. Focused. Intent. Logan followed. Atlas tracked a scent along the edge of the gravel lot. past the office, toward the rear of the property. The dog moved with purpose. Logan's pulse quickened. Atlas stopped near a patch of muddy ground where the snow had partially melted. There, clearly visible, were tire tracks. Fresh ones. Logan crouched. The tracks hadn't been there yesterday. Someone had been watching the motel. Recently. Very recently. Atlas followed the scent farther. Another set of footprints appeared. Partial. Distorted by weather. Yet enough remained to confirm what Logan already suspected. The visitor from the previous night hadn't arrived by accident. They had parked behind the property, hidden from the highway, watching, waiting. Logan slowly stood. The mountains suddenly felt much larger. The motel much smaller. Atlas returned to his side. The German shepherd stared toward the forest, watching the shadows between the trees. Logan looked in the same direction. Nothing moved. Nothing appeared. Yet he could not shake the feeling that somebody was still out there. Somebody who knew exactly what Michael Granger had uncovered. Somebody who knew Logan was asking questions. And somebody who might do anything necessary to keep those answers buried. For the first time since arriving at Timber Ridge Motel, Logan considered walking away. Selling the property. Taking the money. Leaving Black Creek forever. The option still existed. A clean exit. No more danger. No more secrets. No more dead soldiers hidden behind forgotten walls. Then Atlas nudged his hand. The simple gesture brought him back. Back to the present. Back to the truth. Michael Granger had spent 26 years waiting for someone to find room 8, and Atlas had found it. Logan looked toward the motel, toward the hidden room, toward the mystery that refused to stay buried. Then he made his choice. He wasn't leaving. Not now. Not after coming this far. Whatever happened next, he intended to see it through. Even if the men who owned the town wanted him gone. For the next 3 days, Logan threw himself into the investigation. The weather worsened. Heavy clouds settled over the Bitterroot Mountains, and fresh snow buried the surrounding forest beneath a blanket of white. The motel stood alone against the storm, isolated from the rest of the world. Inside the office, stacks of documents covered every available surface. Michael Granger's notes, land records, financial reports, maps, photographs. The deeper Logan dug, the more disturbing the pattern became. Millions of dollars intended for struggling veterans had vanished through development projects that either failed or never existed. Again and again, the same names appeared. Victor Kane, Kane Development Group, associated companies, shell corporations, property transfers. It was enough to convince Logan that Michael had been chasing something real, something dangerous. Atlas spent much of his time beside the office fireplace while Logan worked. Yet whenever Logan became too absorbed in the documents, the German shepherd would stand and nudge his arm. A reminder. Eat, sleep, breathe. Simple things. Things Logan often forgot. Late one afternoon, Logan experienced the first serious panic episode he'd had since arriving at Timber Ridge. It started without warning. A particular photograph, a certain angle of sunlight, a smell drifting through the old motel. Suddenly his mind was no longer in Montana. He was overseas again. Dust, heat, gunfire. The deafening crack of an explosion. The memory arrived like a tidal wave. His chest tightened, his breathing accelerated, his vision narrowed. Logan gripped the edge of the desk. Not again. Not now. Atlas reacted instantly. The dog crossed the room and pressed firmly against Logan's leg. Grounding, anchoring, present. The familiar pressure helped. Slowly, breath by breath. The panic retreated. Logan lowered himself into a chair. Atlas rested his head on his knee. "Thanks, partner." The dog's tail moved once. Outside, snow continued falling. Inside, the motel creaked softly. For a moment, peace returned. It didn't last. The following evening, Claire Bennett called. The signal at the motel was weak, forcing Logan to stand near the office window. "I found something," Claire said. Her voice sounded tense. "What?" "There were rumors years ago. About Michael? About Victor Kane." Snow struck the window. Logan listened carefully. People believed Michael discovered evidence connecting Kane to missing veterans' funds. Logan wasn't surprised. Claire continued. "But here's the strange part." "What?" "After Michael disappeared, several witnesses suddenly changed their stories." Silence. Then, they became afraid. Logan stared into the darkness beyond the glass. Afraid. The same word seemed to follow this mystery everywhere. Fear. Silence. Secrets. Before ending the call, Claire offered one final warning. "Watch your back." The line went dead. Atlas was already standing, watching the parking lot, watching the storm, watching something. Logan followed the dog's gaze. Nothing appeared unusual, just darkness and falling snow. Still, Atlas remained alert. Hours passed. The storm intensified. Wind screamed across the property. Snow piled against the buildings. Near midnight, Logan finally stopped working. The office felt warm, safe. Atlas slept beside the fireplace. The old clock behind the desk read 11:47. Outside, the world had disappeared beneath the blizzard. Visibility couldn't have been more than 20 feet. Logan stretched. His back cracked. For the first time all day, he considered getting some sleep. Then Atlas exploded into motion. The German shepherd leaped to his feet. Growling, not barking, growling, deep, urgent, dangerous. Every hair along his back stood upright. Logan froze. Years of military training immediately returned. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Atlas sprinted toward the office door. The growl became louder, more aggressive. Logan grabbed a flashlight. "Atlas." The dog didn't respond. His focus remained fixed outside. Then Logan smelled it. Smoke. Faint at first. Then stronger. His stomach dropped. He rushed outside. The cold hit instantly, so did the sight. Orange light flickered against the snow. For half a second, his mind refused to process what he was seeing. Then reality crashed into him. Fire. The motel office roof was burning. Flames crawled across the old wooden structure near the rear corner. The storm winds fed the blaze, driving it forward, making it spread faster. Much faster. "Atlas!" Logan ran. Snow exploded beneath his boots. The fire roared louder. The old wood ignited easily after decades of dryness. A window shattered. Glass scattered across the snow. Logan grabbed a fire extinguisher from the hallway. The flames barely noticed. The fire had already grown too large. Atlas barked repeatedly. Not from fear. Warning. The dog suddenly raced toward the rear storage room. Then stopped. Then barked again. Logan understood immediately. The documents, Michael's evidence, still inside. The realization hit like a punch. Without those files, 26 years of truth might disappear forever. Ignoring common sense, Logan ran back into the building. Heat slammed into him. Smoke filled the hallway. The ceiling groaned. Atlas followed without hesitation. Together they pushed toward the office. The room glowed orange. Flames reflected in the windows. Logan grabbed boxes of documents, Michael's notebook, The cassette recorder, the land records, anything he could carry. Atlas remained close, watching, protecting. The ceiling cracked. A loud snapping sound echoed overhead. Logan looked up. Too late. Part of the roof collapsed. Wood crashed into the office. Sparks exploded across the room. Logan stumbled backward. The impact threw him against a desk. Pain shot through his shoulder. For a terrifying second, everything blurred. Then Atlas appeared. The German shepherd barked furiously, standing between Logan and the spreading flames. The dog grabbed Logan's jacket sleeve, pulling, insisting, "Move! Now!" Logan forced himself up. Smoke burned his lungs. Together they staggered toward the exit. Another section of ceiling collapsed behind them. The building shook. Atlas suddenly yelped. The sound froze Logan. He turned. A burning beam had crashed near the doorway. Atlas had been struck by falling debris while clearing the path. The German shepherd limped. One front leg weakened. Pain flashed across his face. Yet he kept moving, kept pushing forward, kept protecting Logan. "No!" Logan rushed to him, ignoring the heat, ignoring the smoke, ignoring everything except the dog. He wrapped both arms around Atlas and helped him through the doorway. Seconds later, they burst into the snow. The freezing air felt like ice against Logan's skin. Behind them, flames consumed part of the office roof. The storm and fire battled each other beneath the dark Montana sky. Logan dropped to his knees beside Atlas. The dog's breathing was rapid. His fur showed signs of burns along one shoulder and side. Not severe, but enough. Far too much. The sight shattered something inside Logan. For a moment, he wasn't looking at Atlas. He was seeing other faces, other soldiers, other friends, people he couldn't save. The old guilt surged upward, raw, painful, relentless. The same helpless feeling he had carried for years. His eyes filled. "Not you." Atlas looked at him, trusting, calm, even now, even injured. Logan pressed his forehead against the dog's neck. Snow landed on both of them. The fire department eventually arrived from Black Creek. The flames were contained before the entire motel was lost. But part of the office suffered serious damage. As dawn approached, emergency lights flashed across the snow-covered property. Firefighters moved through the ruins. Investigators asked questions. Logan answered automatically. His attention never left Atlas. A veterinarian from town arrived shortly after sunrise. After examining the dog, she offered cautious reassurance. "He'll recover." Logan finally exhaled. The tension inside him eased slightly. But he'll need rest. Atlas lay on a blanket beside the truck, exhausted, bandaged, still watching Logan, still making sure his partner was okay. The sunrise painted the mountains gold. Smoke drifted from the damaged motel. Logan stood alone for a long moment. The investigation had already cost Michael Granger his life. Now it had nearly cost Atlas. For the first time since opening room 8, doubt entered his mind. Maybe Claire was right. Maybe some secrets were protected for a reason. Maybe continuing wasn't worth the risk. Logan looked at Atlas. The dog slowly lifted his head. Their eyes met, and for the first time since arriving at Timber Ridge Motel, Logan seriously considered walking away from the mystery forever. The thought stayed with him through the next 2 days. Atlas rested inside one of the undamaged motel rooms while recovering from his injuries. The veterinarian's bandages covered part of his shoulder and front leg. He moved more slowly now, favoring one side whenever he walked. Every limp felt like a knife in Logan's chest. The fire investigators eventually ruled the blaze suspicious. That didn't surprise him. Neither did the fact that nobody seemed eager to pursue the matter. A report was filed. Questions were asked. Then everything stalled, just like Michael Granger's disappearance. Logan spent long hours sitting beside Atlas. Sometimes he read through Michael's documents. Sometimes he stared out the window at the snow-covered mountains. Sometimes he simply sat in silence. The old guilt had returned. The same guilt he'd carried since leaving the Navy. The same guilt that followed him through every failed job, every lost relationship, every sleepless night. People got hurt around him. People always seemed to get hurt around him. Atlas lifted his head one afternoon and rested his muzzle on Logan's knee. The dog seemed to sense exactly where Logan's thoughts were heading. "You almost got killed because of me." Atlas blinked. The shepherd didn't understand the words, but somehow he always understood the feeling behind them. Outside, fresh snow drifted across the property. The damaged section of the motel remained cordoned off with yellow tape. Blackened timbers jutted from the roofline like broken bones. The place looked wounded, much like its owner, and much like the dog lying beside him. By the third morning, Logan had almost convinced himself to leave, sell the property, hand the evidence to Claire, walk away. He even began sorting paperwork into boxes. Atlas watched quietly from his blanket. Then something unexpected happened. The dog stood, slowly, painfully, but deliberately. Logan immediately moved to help him. Easy. Atlas ignored him. Instead, the shepherd limped toward the rear section of the office building, toward the area damaged by the fire. Logan followed. The air still carried the faint smell of smoke. Atlas continued moving, one careful step at a time, until he reached a partially collapsed section of wall near what had once been Russell Pierce's private office. Then he stopped. His nose lifted. He sniffed. Once. Twice. Then he pawed lightly at the floor. Logan frowned. "Atlas?" The dog repeated the motion. The same behavior he'd displayed before discovering room 8. The same stubborn determination. Logan looked around. Most of the room had been cleared after the fire, yet one section remained buried beneath fallen plaster and charred wood. Atlas scratched again, a little harder this time. Logan stared, then grabbed a shovel from nearby. For nearly 30 minutes, he cleared debris. Broken boards, ash, insulation, collapsed drywall. Finally, the shovel struck metal. Clang. The sound echoed through the ruined room. Logan froze, then carefully removed the remaining debris. A steel lockbox emerged from beneath the floorboards. Old, heavy, hidden. His pulse quickened. Atlas sat beside him, watching, waiting. The lock itself had been damaged during the fire. After several minutes of work, Logan finally forced it open. Inside sat a single object, a leather-bound journal. Nothing else, no cash, no valuables, no documents. Just a journal. The cover showed signs of age and wear. On the first page, written in careful handwriting, were 2 words. Russell Pierce. Logan stared. His uncle. For a moment, he simply held the journal. Part of him didn't want to open it. Part of him feared what he might find. Finally, he turned the page. The earliest entries were ordinary. Maintenance issues, business notes, personal reflections. Then the tone began changing. The dates moved closer to 1998, closer to Michael Granger's arrival, closer to whatever had happened at Timber Ridge Motel. Logan read for hours. The deeper he went, the heavier the journal became. Russell's words painted a picture of a man trapped by fear, a man who saw something terrible happening, a man who failed to stop it. One entry made Logan's stomach tighten. October 21st, 1998. Michael came to me again today. He says he has proof. He says people are stealing money meant for veterans. He thinks he can stop them. I told him to leave. God forgive me, I told him to leave. Logan turned the page. His heartbeat accelerated. Another entry. October 24th, 1998. Victor Kane came by tonight. Not alone. He knows Michael is staying here. He knows what Michael found. I have never been more afraid in my life. Logan sat back slowly. Victor Kane. The name appeared again, and again, and again. Every entry grew darker, more desperate, more frightened. Russell described threats, intimidation, warnings, powerful men visiting the motel late at night, vehicles arriving after midnight, conversations nobody else was supposed to hear. Then Logan reached an entry written with visibly shaking handwriting. October 29th, 1998. They moved him into room 8. I told myself it wasn't my responsibility. I told myself I had to protect my family. I told myself there was nothing I could do. Those were lies. I heard him calling for help, and I did nothing. Logan's chest tightened. The words seemed to punch the air from his lungs. He continued reading. Tears blurred parts of the ink. Whether they belonged to Russell or age, Logan couldn't tell. November 2nd, 1998. If anyone ever finds this journal, know this. I did not hurt Michael Granger, but I failed him. I failed because I was afraid. Victor Kane threatened everything. My family, my business, my future. I convinced myself survival was enough. It wasn't. The room grew silent. Only the wind outside disturbed the stillness. Logan closed the journal. His hands trembled. For weeks he had imagined Russell Pierce as part of the conspiracy, part of the evil, part of the cover-up. Now the truth felt far more painful. Russell wasn't a villain. He was a coward, a frightened man who looked away when courage mattered most. The realization hurt more than hatred ever could, because Logan understood fear. He understood panic. He understood making decisions while trapped inside it. Atlas slowly approached. The dog lowered himself beside Logan. The familiar warmth grounded him. Logan rested one hand on the shepherd's neck. Outside, snow continued falling. Inside, Russell's final entry waited. Logan opened the journal one last time. The handwriting appeared weaker, unsteady, as though written years later. If my nephew ever reads this, tell him I am sorry. I spent 26 years carrying this shame. I sealed the room because I thought I was protecting people. The truth is, I was protecting myself. I wasn't strong enough. Maybe he will be. Maybe he will finish what I couldn't. Logan stared at the page. For a long time he said nothing. The anger he carried toward Russell slowly dissolved. Not into forgiveness, not completely, into sadness. Deep sadness. The kind that comes from realizing a person spent decades imprisoned by their own regret. Atlas rested his head against Logan's arm. The mountains outside had begun disappearing beneath another snowfall. The world seemed quieter than usual, more reflective, more solemn. Russell Pierce had not been the monster behind Michael Granger's disappearance. Victor Kane remained at the center of that darkness. But Russell had become something almost equally tragic. A witness. A man who knew the truth. A man who lacked the courage to stop it. And now, 26 years later, he was asking Logan to do what he never could. For the first time since the fire, Logan no longer thought about leaving. He looked down at Atlas. The injured German shepherd met his gaze. Then Logan looked at the journal, at the confession, at the decades of guilt, at the truth finally emerging from the ashes. And somewhere deep inside, determination began replacing grief. Because if Russell Pierce's greatest mistake had been looking away, then Logan knew exactly what he needed to do next. He was going to keep looking, no matter where the truth led. The decision settled into Logan's mind like a stone finding the bottom of a river. For the first time since the fire, the uncertainty was gone. The fear remained. The danger remained. But the doubt had disappeared. Russell Pierce had spent 26 years living with regret because he looked away. Logan refused to make the same mistake. The next morning dawned clear and bitterly cold. The storm had finally passed. Fresh snow covered the Bitterroot Mountains in a blanket of white that stretched to every horizon. Sunlight reflected off the peaks with almost painful brightness. Atlas was improving, not quickly, but enough. The veterinarian had cleared him for short walks around the property. His shoulder remained bandaged, and he still favored one leg, but the strength was slowly returning. Logan watched him step carefully across the courtyard. "Take it easy." Atlas ignored the advice, just as he always did. The German Shepherd had never been interested in limitations, especially when there was work to do. Logan spent the morning reviewing Russell's journal again. One passage continued bothering him. A section near the end referenced a hidden cache. Not directly, not clearly, just a vague sentence written in the margin of a page. If the room is ever discovered, the rest is where he said it would be. No location, no explanation, nothing else. At first, Logan thought it might be meaningless, but Michael Granger had been methodical. The former intelligence officer had hidden evidence inside room 8. Why not somewhere else as well? The possibility lingered in Logan's thoughts. By noon, he decided to search the property again. Atlas insisted on joining him. The two moved slowly across the motel grounds. The old maintenance shed sat near the rear edge of the property. Weathered wood, rusting hinges, a sagging roofline. The structure looked as though a strong wind could knock it over. Logan had searched it once before. Nothing significant. Still, something drew him back. Maybe Russell's journal. Maybe instinct. Maybe simple persistence. Atlas reached the shed first, then stopped. The dog's posture changed instantly. His ears lifted, his body stiffened. Logan recognized the behavior immediately. The same look Atlas had worn before discovering room 8. The same look before finding the hidden key. The same look before uncovering the lockbox. "What is it, partner?" Atlas lowered his nose, sniffed, then moved away from the shed. Not toward the building, toward the tree line beyond it. Logan followed. The snow reached nearly to his calves in some places. The forest stood silent around them. Towering pines, long shadows, absolute stillness. Atlas continued moving, slowly, purposefully, following a scent. Or perhaps many scents layered across decades. The dog crossed a narrow clearing behind the shed, then stopped beside an overgrown patch of ground. At first, Logan saw nothing unusual, just snow, brush, dead grass. Then Atlas began digging, not playfully, not casually, determined, focused. Every movement carried intent. Snow flew behind him. Dirt followed. Logan watched quietly. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Atlas refused to stop. "Easy." The dog ignored him. Dig. Pause. Sniff. Dig again. Finally, Logan knelt beside the hole. His shovel struck something solid. Clang. Metal. Both man and dog froze. Logan carefully cleared more dirt. A rusted steel container emerged from the ground. Long. Rectangular. Roughly the size of a toolbox. His pulse accelerated. Atlas sat beside the hole, watching, waiting. The container had clearly been buried intentionally, not recently. Years ago, maybe decades. Logan lifted it carefully. The metal groaned under its own weight. The lock had long since corroded away. After several attempts, the lid opened. Inside sat a collection of items wrapped in oilcloth, protected from moisture, protected from time, protected from discovery. Until now. Logan removed the first bundle. His breath caught. Military dog tags, stamped with a name. Michael Granger. The world seemed to stop. For a moment, neither Logan nor Atlas moved. The tags felt cold in his hand. Real. Undeniable. The first direct physical connection to the missing man. Beneath them sat several photographs. Michael appeared in many of them. Some showed him standing beside motel rooms. Others showed meetings, buildings, vehicles, people Logan didn't recognize. More documents followed. Financial ledgers, property records, handwritten notes. The same names that appeared throughout Michael's investigation. The same companies, the same network. The evidence was extensive. Far more extensive than anything hidden inside room 8. Then Logan found the map, folded carefully, protected inside plastic. He opened it slowly. A section of the Bitterroot Mountains filled the page. Several landmarks had been marked in red ink. One location carried a simple handwritten note. "If anything happens to me." Logan stared. The location sat roughly 15 miles from the motel, deep in the mountains, far from roads, far from towns, far from witnesses. A terrible possibility formed immediately. Atlas seemed to sense the change. The dog moved closer. Logan looked down at the map, then at the dog tags, then at the mountains rising beyond the forest. The answer felt obvious and horrifying. The following morning, Logan contacted Claire. Within hours, she arrived at Timber Ridge Motel. The moment she saw the contents of the container, she understood the significance, especially the dog tags. "Oh my God." Logan handed her the map. Claire studied it silently, then looked toward the mountains. "You think that's where he is?" Logan nodded. Neither of them wanted to say it aloud, but both understood. The location marked on the map wasn't evidence. It was a destination, a final destination. By afternoon, they were heading into the mountains. Atlas insisted on coming despite his injuries. Logan couldn't have stopped him if he tried. The terrain grew increasingly difficult. Snow covered narrow trails. Steep ridges overlooked frozen valleys. The wilderness seemed endless. Hours passed. Then Atlas stopped. The German shepherd stood perfectly still. His nose lifted into the cold air. Then he moved downhill, directly toward a narrow canyon. The place felt isolated, forgotten. The sort of location no one would accidentally discover. Atlas led them to a cluster of boulders near the canyon floor. Then he stopped again. This time he didn't dig immediately. He simply stared at the ground. Logan's stomach tightened. The feeling returned. The same feeling he'd experienced opening room 8. The sense that everything was about to change. Carefully, he began digging. Snow, rock, frozen soil. The work took nearly an hour. Then the shovel struck something. Not metal, something else. Logan froze. Claire looked away. Neither spoke. The silence said enough. By sunset, authorities had been notified. The area was secured. Investigators arrived before nightfall. Logan remained nearby with Atlas, watching, waiting. Hours later, one of the investigators approached. His expression was solemn, respectful. "It's him." The words landed quietly, but they carried enormous weight. 26 years. 26 years of questions. 26 years of uncertainty. 26 years of silence. finally ended. Michael Granger had been found. Logan looked down at the dog tags in his hand, then toward Atlas. The German shepherd sat beside him beneath the fading mountain light, tired, bandaged, faithful. Without Atlas, none of this would have happened. No room 8, no hidden evidence, no journal, no map, no answers. The missing man had waited 26 years for someone to find him. In the end, it wasn't a detective. It wasn't an investigator. It wasn't law enforcement. It was a retired military dog who refused to stop looking. As darkness settled over the Bitterroot Mountains, Logan rested a hand on Atlas's neck. "You found him." Atlas leaned gently against his leg, and for the first time since arriving at Timber Ridge Motel, Logan felt something unexpected. Not victory, not happiness. Resolution. Michael Granger was no longer missing. Now the world would finally have to face the truth about why. The news spread across Montana faster than anyone expected. What began as a local story in Black Creek exploded into a statewide investigation within days. A missing Army intelligence officer, a hidden motel room, evidence buried for 26 years, a powerful developer connected to suspicious financial records. The story had everything reporters wanted, and for the first time in decades, people began asking questions that certain men had spent years avoiding. Claire Bennett published the first major article. The headline appeared on the front page of the Black Creek Chronicle. Missing veteran found after 26 years. Evidence points to larger cover-up. The article spread online. Television stations picked it up. Regional newspapers followed. By the end of the week, reporters were calling Timber Ridge Motel from across the state. Logan ignored most of them. His focus remained on Atlas. The German shepherd continued recovering. The burns were healing. The limp was improving. Yet Logan still found himself watching the dog constantly. The memory of the fire remained fresh. Too fresh. Some nights he woke suddenly just to make sure Atlas was still breathing. The old fears never truly disappeared. They simply changed shape. Federal investigators arrived 3 days after Michael's remains were identified. Several vehicles rolled into the motel parking lot shortly after sunrise. Men and women in dark jackets carried evidence boxes from room 8. Others interviewed Logan for hours. Atlas remained nearby throughout the process, always watching, always listening. One investigator spent nearly an hour examining Michael's documents. When he finished, his expression had changed. "What is it?" Logan asked. The man closed the folder slowly. "If these records are authentic, this goes much higher than we originally thought." Logan wasn't surprised. Neither was Claire. The deeper they dug, the larger the corruption appeared. Millions of dollars, veterans' housing funds, assistance programs, development grants, entire projects that existed only on paper. Money vanished while veterans struggled. Some lost homes, some lost families, some lost hope. The anger inside Logan grew with every new discovery. Yet the real counterattack began a week later. Victor Kane finally spoke publicly. The interview aired during the evening news. Logan watched it from the motel office. Atlas rested beside his chair. Victor appeared calm, confident, polished. Exactly the image people expected. The reporter asked about Michael Granger, asked about the missing funds, asked about the investigation. Victor smiled. Then he answered. "This entire situation is tragic." The words sounded rehearsed, carefully crafted. But we must be careful not to jump to conclusions. The reporter pressed further. Victor's expression never changed. Then came the attack. Not on the evidence, not on the investigation, on Logan. Mr. Pierce is a former homeless veteran who has openly struggled with severe PTSD. Logan's jaw tightened. Atlas immediately lifted his head. The interview continued. While I sympathize deeply with his service and sacrifices, I believe people should be cautious about accepting accusations without proper verification. The implication was obvious. Logan wasn't being presented as a witness. He was being presented as unstable, unreliable, broken. The same old stigma, the same assumptions, the same dismissal many veterans faced every day. The interview ended. The damage didn't. Within 24 hours, social media filled with speculation. Some supported Logan. Others questioned him. Others repeated Victor Kane's narrative. The pressure mounted quickly, far quicker than Logan expected. The motel phone rang constantly. Reporters, strangers, commentators, supporters, critics. The attention became overwhelming. The nightmares returned with greater intensity. Sleep grew difficult. Crowds became harder. The constant scrutiny triggered memories Logan had spent years trying to manage. One afternoon, he found himself standing alone behind the motel, breathing hard, heart racing. The mountains around him suddenly felt distant, unreal. The familiar symptoms were returning. Tunnel vision, sweating, rapid breathing, his body preparing for danger that wasn't actually there. The panic attack arrived like an ambush, fast, violent, unforgiving. Logan gripped a fence post. Not again. Not now. Not when everything depended on him. The world blurred. Voices echoed. For a terrifying moment, he wasn't in Montana anymore. He was back overseas, back among gunfire and chaos, back in memories he never wanted to revisit. Then Atlas appeared. The German shepherd pressed firmly against his side. Solid, real, present. Logan felt the pressure, felt the warmth, felt the familiar grounding. Slowly, his breathing stabilized. Atlas remained beside him the entire time, not leaving, not moving, simply reminding him where he was. When the panic finally passed, Logan dropped to one knee. His hand rested against the dog's neck. Good boy. Atlas leaned into him. The simple moment meant more than words could express. Days later, Black Creek held a public town hall meeting. The federal investigation had become impossible to ignore. Residents packed the community center. Reporters lined the walls. Cameras filled the room. Victor Kane attended. So did Claire. So did federal investigators. And so did Logan. The moment he entered the building, every eye seemed to turn toward him. The attention felt overwhelming. Atlas walked calmly at his side. The dog had become more than a companion. He was a lifeline. The meeting quickly became heated. Residents demanded answers. Questions flew across the room. Missing funds, corruption, Michael Granger, the motel, room 8. Everything surfaced. Victor Kane remained composed, at least initially. Then one resident stood, an elderly veteran. His voice shook slightly. How many of us were denied help while that money disappeared? Silence followed. Heavy silence. The question landed harder than any accusation. Victor had no answer. Several other veterans spoke. Widows, families, people whose lives had been affected by programs that never delivered what was promised. The room shifted. Public opinion shifted with it. For the first time, Victor Kane looked uncomfortable. Then came Logan's turn. Standing before a crowd would have terrified him a few months earlier. Even now it wasn't easy. The pressure built immediately. Dozens of faces, dozens of eyes. The old anxiety stirred. Atlas sensed it. The German shepherd moved closer. His shoulder brushed Logan's leg, grounding him, keeping him present. Logan looked down briefly. then back at the crowd. And he spoke. Not as a hero, not as an investigator, simply as a veteran. He told them about Room 8, about Michael, about the hidden evidence, about the men and women who were supposed to benefit from those missing funds. The room listened, quietly, respectfully. When he finished, nobody applauded. Nobody cheered. The silence carried more weight than either, because the truth had become impossible to ignore. As the meeting ended, Victor Kane left quickly, faster than before. The confidence that once surrounded him seemed diminished, not gone, but cracked. Outside, snow drifted gently beneath the streetlights. Logan and Atlas walked toward the truck. The cold air felt sharp against his face. For a moment, neither moved. The mountains stood dark beyond town, silent witnesses to everything unfolding below. Claire approached from behind. You did good. Logan shrugged. I just told the truth. Claire looked toward the community center. Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do. Atlas leaned against Logan's leg. The familiar gesture brought a small smile. The investigation was growing. The pressure was increasing. Victor Kane was becoming more desperate. Everyone could feel it. Yet despite the attacks, despite the panic, despite the fear, Logan remained standing. Because Michael Granger had spent 26 years waiting for someone to finish what he started. And now, with Atlas beside him, Logan intended to see it through to the very end. Even if the most powerful man in the valley still believed he could silence another soldier. Winter tightened its grip on Black Creek. Snow covered the mountains. Ice formed along the edges of the river. The days felt shorter now. But the investigation continued moving forward. Federal agents remained in town. More financial records surfaced. More witnesses came forward. People who had stayed silent for years suddenly found the courage to speak. Some were retired county employees. Others were former contractors. Several admitted they had seen things that never made sense. Money disappearing. Projects existing only on paper. Records altered. Questions discouraged. The wall of silence surrounding Victor Kane had begun to crack. But it still hadn't broken. Not completely. The missing piece remained Michael Granger himself. His voice. His story. His proof. The evidence already uncovered was substantial. Yet Logan knew something important was still missing. Michael had been too careful. Too methodical. Too intelligent. A former Army intelligence officer wouldn't have hidden only part of the truth. There had to be more. The answer arrived 3 days later. Atlas found it. The morning began quietly. Logan was organizing recovered items from Room 8 inside one of the motel's undamaged rooms. Boxes filled the floor. Documents, photographs, personal belongings, military books, everything investigators had finished processing. Atlas wandered slowly through the room. His injuries had healed significantly. The bandages were gone. Only a slight stiffness remained. The German Shepherd stopped beside Michael's old duffel bag, the same bag Logan had examined weeks earlier. Atlas sniffed once, then again. Then he pawed the bag. Logan looked up. You already checked that. Atlas pawed it again, more insistently. Logan smiled. Experience had taught him not to ignore the dog. Ever. He pulled the duffel closer. Most of the contents had already been catalogued. Clothing, papers, a flashlight. Nothing new. Yet Atlas continued watching, waiting. Logan examined the bag more carefully. His fingers moved along the interior seams. The lining felt thicker near the bottom. Strange. He frowned, then pressed harder. Something rigid rested beneath the fabric. His pulse quickened. Using a pocket knife, he carefully opened a stitched section hidden inside the bag. The fabric separated. A narrow compartment appeared, and inside sat a single cassette tape. Logan froze. For several seconds, he simply stared. The tape looked untouched, protected, hidden intentionally. The final piece. Atlas sat beside him, watching quietly, as if he'd known it was there all along. Logan picked up the cassette. A small handwritten label covered one side. "If you're hearing this, I failed. Michael Granger." A chill moved through him. He immediately called Claire. Within an hour she arrived. Federal investigators followed shortly afterward. Everyone understood the significance. If Michael left a final recording, it could answer questions that had haunted Black Creek for 26 years. The decision was made quickly. The tape would be played publicly, not in a private office, not behind closed doors, in front of everyone. The hearing was scheduled for the following evening. Word spread fast. By sunset the next day, the Black Creek Community Center was overflowing. Residents packed every available seat. Reporters lined the walls. Cameras pointed toward the stage. Federal investigators sat near the front. Claire occupied the first row. Victor Kane arrived as well. For the first time since the investigation began, his confidence appeared strained. Not broken, but strained. Logan noticed it immediately. Atlas sat beside him near the stage, calm, steady, a reminder of how far they'd come. The room buzzed with anticipation. Then silence settled. The hearing began. Several investigators summarized the evidence already collected. Financial records, witness testimony, property documents, the discovery of Michael's remains. Everything pointed toward a long-running scheme involving stolen veterans' funds. Then came the cassette. The room became completely silent. One investigator placed the tape inside a recorder. The play button clicked. Static filled the speakers. Then a voice emerged. A voice nobody had heard in 26 years. Michael Granger. The room seemed to hold its breath. If you're listening to this recording, then something happened to me. The voice sounded calm, measured, professional. Exactly what Logan imagined an intelligence officer would sound like. Michael continued. I've gathered enough evidence to know I'm being watched. The audience remained motionless. Every eye fixed on the speaker. Every ear focused on the recording. I came to Black Creek because I believed veterans' assistance funds were being stolen. A pause. Then, I was right. The words landed heavily. Michael began explaining everything. The missing money, the shell companies, the fake development projects, the hidden transfers, the network of individuals who helped move the funds. Years of corruption condensed into a single testimony. Then Michael spoke the name everyone had been waiting to hear. Victor Kane. The room shifted. Not physically, emotionally. The tension became almost tangible. Michael continued. Victor Kane controlled the operation. A woman in the audience gasped quietly. Nobody else moved. Nobody else spoke. The tape carried on. He used legitimate projects to conceal fraudulent ones. More details followed. More evidence. More names. Then Michael's voice softened slightly. If you're hearing this, then somebody finally found room 8. Logan felt Atlas press lightly against his leg. The familiar gesture steadied him. Michael continued. I hid what I could. I left evidence where another veteran might someday find it. The words hit Logan harder than expected. Another veteran. Not a journalist. Not a politician. Not a lawyer. A veteran. Michael had trusted someone like him. Someone he would never meet. The room remained silent. Many people were crying now, especially older veterans seated throughout the audience. Michael's final message approached. His voice sounded tired, but determined. "If I disappear, don't let them bury the truth with me." A long pause followed. Then the final sentence. "Tell my family I never stopped fighting." The tape ended. Static filled the room. Then silence. Complete silence. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the reporters remained still. The weight of 26 years hung over everyone. Finally, an investigator stood. His voice carried across the room. "Based on the evidence recovered, federal arrest warrants have been issued." The announcement shattered the silence. Murmurs spread immediately. Victor Kane stood. For a brief moment, it appeared he might say something, defend himself, deny everything. Instead, he simply stared. The confidence that once surrounded him had vanished, completely. Several federal agents approached. The room watched. No cheering, no celebration. Only quiet recognition. The truth had finally arrived, and there was nowhere left for it to hide. As the hearing ended, people slowly filed from the building. Many stopped to speak with Logan. Others knelt beside Atlas, thanking him, petting him, calling him a hero. The German shepherd accepted the attention patiently, though his focus never drifted far from Logan. Outside, snow fell softly beneath the streetlights. Claire joined them near the parking lot. For several moments, none of them spoke. The cold air felt clean, peaceful, different somehow. Finally, Claire looked toward the mountains. "You know what amazes me?" Logan shook his head. "What?" She smiled. Michael trusted the right person. Logan looked down at Atlas. The dog stared back, steady as ever. Maybe Michael had, or maybe Atlas had simply refused to let the truth stay buried. Either way, Room 8 had finally spoken, and after 26 years of silence, the entire valley had heard its voice. The fight was over. The truth had won. But the story wasn't finished yet. Because some endings don't arrive with punishment. They arrive with healing. Spring arrived slowly in the Bitterroot Mountains. The snow melted from the lower valleys first, then from the hillsides, then from the long stretches of forest surrounding Timber Ridge Motel. For the first time since Logan Pierce inherited the property, the place no longer felt abandoned. It felt alive. Construction crews repaired the sections damaged by the fire. Fresh paint covered weathered walls. Broken windows were replaced. The old neon sign at the highway entrance glowed again for the first time in decades. Timber Ridge Motel. The letters shined softly against the Montana evening sky. Logan stood in the parking lot one afternoon watching workers finish the final repairs. Atlas sat beside him. The German shepherd's injuries had healed almost completely. Only a faint scar remained beneath his fur. A reminder. A permanent mark left behind by the journey that changed both of their lives. "You look better than I do." Atlas glanced up. His tail thumped once against the pavement. Logan smiled. The smile came easier now, not because the past had disappeared, not because the nightmares were gone, but because something had changed. For the first time in years, he had purpose. The federal investigation continued. More arrests followed. Additional evidence surfaced. Several fraudulent companies were dismantled. Money connected to the stolen veterans programs was recovered. Some of it would eventually be redirected toward the very people it had originally been intended to help. Victor Kane's empire had collapsed. But Logan found himself thinking about Kane less and less. The story had never really been about Victor Kane. It was about Michael Granger, Russell Pierce, Atlas, the veterans who had been forgotten, and what happened when somebody finally listened. The motel officially reopened 6 months after the public hearing, not as a luxury destination, not as a tourist attraction. Something else. Something better. Logan transformed Timber Ridge into a retreat for struggling veterans, first responders, and families facing difficult times. The rooms remained simple, affordable, comfortable. The atmosphere felt different from ordinary motels. People arrived carrying burdens. Many left carrying less. Word spread quietly. Veterans told other veterans. Families recommended it to friends. Soon reservations began filling weeks in advance. The place that once hid secrets had become a place of healing. And at the center of everything stood Room 8. Logan never rented it, never remodeled it, never altered it. The room remained exactly as it had been discovered. The bed, the desk, the chair, the old jacket. Everything stayed where Michael Granger left it. Only one addition had been made. A bronze plaque mounted beside the entrance. It read, Michael Granger, Army intelligence officer, a man who refused to look away. Truth matters, courage matters. Your voice matters. Visitors often stood there quietly, reading, reflecting, remembering a man most of them had never met. One bright June morning, the motel hosted its official dedication ceremony. The mountains stood green and beautiful beneath a clear sky. Flags lined the courtyard. Veterans gathered from across Montana. Families filled folding chairs arranged in neat rows. Claire Bennett sat near the front. Several federal investigators attended as well. Even Karen Whitmore, the attorney who first delivered the inheritance papers, made the drive from Hamilton. Logan felt nervous. Crowds still weren't easy. Public attention still unsettled him. Some things never disappeared completely. Atlas sensed it. The German shepherd remained pressed against his side as guests arrived. Steady, reliable, present, the same way he had always been. The ceremony began simply. No grand speeches, no politicians, just people. People whose lives had intersected because one hidden room refused to stay hidden forever. Then a black SUV slowly entered the parking lot. The crowd noticed immediately. The vehicle parked near the edge of the courtyard. A woman stepped out, mid-30s, dark hair, nervous expression. She stood motionless for several seconds, as though gathering the courage to move. Logan knew who she was before anyone introduced her. Michael Granger's daughter, Emily. The woman whose entire life had been shaped by unanswered questions. The woman who spent 26 years believing her father abandoned her. Silence spread across the gathering. Emily walked slowly toward Room 8. Nobody stopped her. Nobody spoke. The crowd simply watched. Logan followed at a respectful distance. Atlas walked beside him. Emily entered the room. Sunlight streamed through the window. Dust no longer filled the air, but the room still felt frozen in time. She stared at the desk, the bed, the belongings, the life interrupted. Then her eyes found the photograph resting beside the plaque. Michael Granger, smiling, alive, real, not a mystery, not a headline. Her father. Tears filled her eyes immediately. For several moments, she simply stood there, looking, absorbing, understanding. Logan quietly handed her copies of the recordings, the photographs, the investigation findings, everything that explained what happened. Everything that proved Michael never abandoned his family. Emily listened to portions of the final cassette recording through headphones. When Michael's voice filled her ears, she closed her eyes. The room remained silent. No one interrupted. No one rushed her. When she finally removed the headphones, tears ran freely down her face. But there was something else there, too. Relief. 26 years of uncertainty had finally ended. My mother waited for answers until the day she died. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Logan nodded gently. I'm sorry. Emily looked around the room again, then smiled sadly. He kept fighting. He did. The words felt simple, yet they carried enormous weight. She stepped toward Atlas. The German shepherd sat calmly beside Logan. Emily knelt. Atlas immediately leaned forward and allowed her to wrap her arms around his neck. For several seconds, she simply held him, crying quietly. The dog remained perfectly still, patient, gentle, understanding in the way only loyal dogs sometimes seem to understand. Finally, Emily looked up. If it wasn't for him, her voice broke. Logan looked down at Atlas. The old shepherd gazed back with calm brown eyes, the same eyes that had stared at a strange wall, the same eyes that had found room 8, the same eyes that had refused to stop searching. No, Logan said softly. It wouldn't have happened. The dedication ceremony resumed later that afternoon. Stories were shared, memories honored, lessons remembered. As the sun began setting behind the mountains, guests slowly departed. The courtyard emptied. The motel grew quiet again. Logan stood alone near the entrance sign. Atlas rested beside him. A gentle breeze moved through the valley. The same valley that once hid corruption. The same valley that once buried truth. Now it felt different. Lighter somehow. At peace, Motel. The parking lot that had once stood empty now held life. Families, veterans, travelers, second chances. Logan thought back to the freezing truck outside Black Creek, the loneliness, the despair, the feeling that his life was over. It felt like another lifetime. Not because the pain had vanished, but because he had found something worth carrying it for. Atlas stood and nudged his hand. The familiar gesture made Logan laugh softly. Yeah. The German shepherd wagged his tail. Together they walked toward the motel, toward the people inside, toward the future. Behind them, room 8 remained open, not as a grave, not as a mystery, as a reminder that truth may take years to emerge, that courage matters, that loyalty matters, that forgotten people deserve to be remembered, and that sometimes the difference between silence and justice begins with a single dog refusing to stop looking. The motel that once buried a secret now gave forgotten voices a home. Michael Granger's name was cleared. Victor Kane had fallen. Russell Pierce's truth had finally been told. Logan Pierce found purpose, and Atlas, the loyal German shepherd who discovered the hidden room, became the hero who made all of it possible. As darkness settled over the Bitterroot Mountains and the lights of Timber Ridge Motel glowed warmly beneath the evening sky, Logan realized something he never thought he would feel again. Hope. Not the fragile kind. The real kind. The kind that stays. The kind worth fighting for. The end. If you believe the truth always deserves a chance to be heard, comment yes below and tell us where you're watching from. Sometimes justice takes years, but it only takes one person or one loyal dog to keep searching. And if stories about courage, dignity, and standing your ground mean something to you, subscribe and join us for the next unforgettable story from the land of the free.